Body cam footage recovered from a frozen Wisconsin lake contains something that forensic audio specialists still can't explain. When retired DNR fisheries technician Cy Hendricks went ice fishing on Lake Tomahawk in January 2024, his routine recording captured voices beneath the ice. Voices that seemed to call his name and respond to his every movement. What investigators found in the final hour of that footage defies every conventional explanation they've tried. The body cam was running when Cy Hendricks arrived at his usual spot on Lake Tomahawk's northeast bay that January morning. As a retired Wisconsin DNR fisheries technician with 23 years monitoring fish populations and conducting creel surveys, Cy approached ice fishing with the same methodical precision he'd brought to his career. Every trip was documented, every hole placement was deliberate. The small GoPro mounted to his chest harness had become as routine as his tackle box. The footage starts unremarkably. Cy's gloved hands appear in frame as he unloads his sled. Portable shelter, gas auger, electronics, the standard arsenal of a serious ice angler. His voice, calm and practiced, narrates the setup for his own records. January 18th, 2024, Lake Tomahawk, Northeast Bay. Ice thickness approximately 14 inches. Wind northwest at 8 to 12. The kind of detailed observations that had defined his professional life. His DNR background had trained him to monitor fish populations, tag specimens, and analyze aquatic environments, skills that made him acutely aware of the subtle signs that separated productive fishing spots from empty water. On this particular morning, his fish finder was marking suspended fish in 18 feet of water, exactly where the lake's thermocline typically held winter panfish. Everything about the setup suggested a routine day. The gas auger fires on the second pull. Cy positions it over his first mark and begins drilling, ice shavings spiraling up from the hole as the blade chews through the thick January freeze. His movements are efficient, practiced, the muscle memory of countless winter mornings. The body cam captures it all, the steady rhythm of the auger, the growing pile of ice chips, Cy's measured breathing in the cold air. 12 minutes into the footage, as Cy drops his transducer into the first hole, something changes. He pauses mid-motion, head tilted slightly toward the ice. The camera picks up his whispered, "What the hell was that?" The first moment the recording would deviate from routine. The fish finder screen shows the expected marks below, but Cy isn't watching the electronics anymore. He's listening. What happened next, as the footage continues to roll, would challenge every assumption Cy had built about the lake he'd studied professionally for over 2 decades. At precisely 8:47 a.m., 17 minutes into the recording, a sound emerges from beneath the ice that stops him cold. It's faint at first, a low murmur that could almost pass for wind or settling ice. But as Cy lowers his ear toward the hole he's just drilled, the audio picks up something unmistakable. A voice muffled by water and ice calling his name. Cy. Cy. The retired fisheries technician's reaction is immediate and telling. Rather than panic or flee, his scientific training kicks in. He pulls out a small notebook, the same kind he'd used for field observations throughout his DNR career, and begins documenting. 8:47 a.m. Possible acoustic phenomenon. Source appears to be beneath ice surface, approximately 18 feet down. His voice on the recording is steady, methodical, but there's an edge of confusion that wasn't there before. Cy moves to his second planned hole location, 20 yards northeast of the first. The gas auger fires up again, but this time as the blade breaks through the bottom layer of ice, the voices return immediately. Clearer now, more distinct. Not just his name, but full phrases. Cy, down here, and what sounds like "help us." The body cam captures his gloved hand trembling slightly as he sets down the auger and kneels beside the fresh hole. His response reveals the depth of his professional curiosity overriding any fear. Cy retrieves a weighted line from his tackle box, the same kind he'd used for depth measurements during fish population surveys, and drops it into the hole while keeping his ear close to the opening. The voices seem to respond to his actions, becoming more urgent, more insistent. "We're waiting, Cy," followed by sounds that could be movement in the water below. The most disturbing moment comes when Sai speaks directly to whatever is beneath the ice. "Who's down there?" he asks, his voice carrying across the empty lake surface. The response, captured clearly on the body cam audio, is immediate. "You know who we are." The voice that answers isn't muffled by water anymore. It's clear, distinct, and speaking from directly beneath the ice with impossible clarity. By 9:15 a.m., Sai has drilled 4 holes in a rough square pattern, each one producing the same phenomenon. The voices now seem to move between the holes, calling to him from different locations as if tracking his movements across the ice. His final notation before the footage takes its most unsettling turn reads simply, "Voices confirmed at multiple locations, proceeding with additional holes to establish pattern." So if you heard voices calling your name from 18 feet underwater like Sai did, would you keep drilling more holes or get off the ice immediately? Comment your answer below. Now let's examine what happened during that final hour of footage that investigators still can't explain. What the audio analysis revealed about those voices proved far more disturbing than anything visible in Sai's footage. 3 weeks after the body cam was recovered from the ice, forensic audio specialists began their examination of the 93 minutes of recorded material. What they found in the digital waveforms defied every technical explanation they attempted. The voices beneath the ice weren't just audible, they were impossible. According to the lab's acoustic analysis, the sounds Sai heard were originating from depths that should have rendered them completely inaudible through 18 inches of solid ice and 18 feet of water. The frequency signatures showed characteristics that couldn't occur naturally in an aquatic environment. More troubling still, the voices exhibited perfect clarity and volume consistency, despite the massive acoustic barriers between their apparent source and Sai's position on the surface. The voices weren't echoes, weren't reflections, and weren't environmental sounds misinterpreted by human perception. They were distinct vocalizations with identifiable speech patterns, but they were physically impossible given the recording environment. The most unsettling discovery came when investigators isolated individual voice tracks and ran them through speaker identification software. The program flagged multiple matches in the Wisconsin Missing Persons database. 7 different voices captured on Sai's recording matched the vocal patterns of individuals who had disappeared from the Lake Tomahawk region over the past 12 years. All 7 had last been seen near or on the lake during winter months, but the technical impossibility went deeper. Spectral analysis revealed that the voices were speaking in perfect synchronization with Sai's movements and questions, with response times that suggested real-time interaction. Yet the acoustic delay from 18 feet underwater through ice should have created a minimum 2-second lag in any actual conversation. The voices were responding to Sai's words before the sound waves could have physically reached their apparent source. The final acoustic report, filed 6 weeks after the initial analysis, contained a single conclusion. The recorded vocalizations exhibit characteristics consistent with human speech patterns, while demonstrating acoustic properties that are physically impossible in the documented environment. The voices appear to be responding to surface activity in real time, despite originating from depths that would prevent such interaction. No conventional explanation accounts for the observed phenomena. By the time the analysis was complete, Sai Hendricks had been missing for 47 days. His body cam had captured something that shouldn't exist, speaking with voices that belonged to people who were already gone. The final hour of Sai's body cam footage captures a man whose methodical approach to ice fishing had devolved into something far more disturbing. At 9:32 a.m., 45 minutes after first hearing the voices, Sai begins drilling his 7th hole, this one positioned dangerously close to a pressure ridge where the ice had buckled and refrozen. The drilling pattern he creates over the next 26 minutes defies every safety protocol he'd learned during his DNR career. Instead of the conservative, widely spaced holes that experienced ice fishermen use to test conditions safely, Sai bores a tight cluster of openings within a 15-foot radius. Each new hole weakens the structural integrity of the ice around it, creating what any fisheries technician would recognize as a catastrophic failure waiting to happen. The body cam captures his increasingly frantic movements as he shuttles between holes, dropping his weighted line into each opening while muttering responses to whatever he's hearing beneath the ice. His breathing becomes labored, visible in sharp puffs of vapor against the January cold. The voices, now audible on nearly every hole, seem to direct his actions with increasing urgency. "Closer, Si. We need you closer," echoes clearly from multiple openings, as if whatever is speaking has moved to surround him. At 9:58 a.m., the footage shows Si making a decision that would have horrified his former colleagues at the DNR. He begins drilling holes in a straight line leading directly toward the lake's natural spring area, a section where underground currents prevent solid ice formation even in the depths of winter. Si advances methodically toward the most dangerous area of the entire lake, the one he would have warned any junior technician to avoid. The final minutes of recording capture Si kneeling beside his last hole, just 30 yards from the spring's influence zone. His gloved hands shake as he lowers the weighted line, and for the first time since the voices began, his professional composure completely breaks. "I'm here," he calls into the hole, his voice cracking with exhaustion and something approaching desperation. "I did what you asked. I'm here." The response that comes from beneath the ice is immediate and chilling. "Now come down to us, Si. Come down where you belong." The body cam goes black at exactly 10:04 a.m. When search teams recovered the device 6 weeks later, they found it frozen into the ice 30 feet from Si's final hole. The same hole where divers would later discover that the lake bottom dropped into an unmapped cavern system that had never appeared on any of the surveys Si had conducted during his career. The camera had captured 93 minutes of footage. Si Hendricks was never found. What investigators discovered in the final forensic report would haunt them for months afterward. The audio analysis that began as routine evidence processing had uncovered something that challenged every assumption about what human voices could do beneath 18 feet of frozen water. Forensic voice specialists face the ongoing challenge of convincing legal professionals that voice comparison can by no means give the sort of straightforward answers that fingerprints or DNA permit. But the recording presented problems that went far beyond the usual limitations of acoustic analysis. The most disturbing revelation came when investigators attempted to trace the source locations of the individual voices. Using advanced directional audio mapping techniques, they determined that 7 distinct speakers weren't clustered in a single underwater location, as would be expected if the sounds originated from trapped air pockets or underwater caverns. Instead, the voices were distributed across a roughly 100-yard radius beneath the ice, positioned at depths ranging from 12 to 35 feet. Depths that corresponded exactly to Lake Tomahawk's documented drowning locations over the past 12 years. The technical impossibility deepened when acoustic engineers examined the water temperature data from January 18, 2024. Lake Tomahawk's winter thermocline showed a consistent 34-degree temperature throughout the water column, conditions that should have created significant acoustic distortion for any sounds traveling upward through the water. Yet the recorded voices exhibited none of the frequency shifts, echo patterns, or thermal layer interference that physics demanded. The sounds were reaching the recording position with clarity that suggested they were originating just beneath the ice surface, not from the documented depths where the mapping placed them. When Lake Tomahawk was drained for dam maintenance 6 months later, the first time in 43 years that the lake bottom had been exposed, search teams discovered something that matched the acoustic analysis with impossible precision. 7 sets of remains scattered across the lake floor in positions that corresponded exactly to the voice source locations identified in the forensic report. All 7 individuals had been reported missing from the Lake Tomahawk area during winter months between 2012 and 2023. All 7 had last been seen ice fishing alone. The body cam that captured the final morning remains the only evidence of what lies beneath Lake Tomahawk's winter ice. The recording has been analyzed by acoustic specialists from 3 universities and 2 federal agencies. None can explain how 7 people who had been dead for years managed to call out with voices that defied every law of physics, or why their words seem designed to lure another ice fisherman to join them in the depths where no search team would ever find him. Subscribe for more documented wilderness mysteries. Next, another outdoorsman's encounter with something that shouldn't exist.